At last, LSU lands a safety in the transfer portal. We'll tell you about him. It's Locked on LSU. Let's go.
You are Locked on LSU, your daily podcast on the LSU Tigers. Part of the Locked on Podcast Network, your team every day.
Okay, let's get it. It is Locked on LSU, your team every day. I'm your host, Matt Moscona. Thanks for making us your first listen. We're free, available wherever you get podcasts, of course, on YouTube as well. So please subscribe. As always, one of the fastest ways to help us grow is by leaving your comments below. So thank you for that. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. LSU gets another big returnee, the basketball Tigers, in a do-or-die situation against John Calipari and the Arkansas Razorbacks Tuesday night at the Maravich Center. We'll give you a thumbnail preview of that. But let us begin with massive transfer portal news as LSU has finally landed a safety out of the transfer portal. It is Tamarcus Cooley from NC State, who on Monday made it official. Not only did he pick the Tigers, he officially signed with the Tigers. So this is a done deal, signed, sealed, delivered. Tamarcus Cooley is an LSU Tiger. So if you are an everydayer, thank you for being an everydayer. You have heard me tell you many times that LSU would not start the 2025 season. They would not go to Clemson, South Carolina, and play Clemson without adding a safety in the transfer portal. It was whatever is a wants, needs, must, whatever is like a 10X on a must, that was safety. Safety was your weakest position on the roster in 2024. You had to address it with an impact guy. You did it, and you may not be done. So I want to tell you how they look at safety for 2025, maybe beyond as well. But let me begin just by telling you about Tamarcus Cooley, maybe for those that aren't familiar. So Tamarcus Cooley, when he was coming out of high school, was a lightly regarded prospect. So he was a 3-star. And he was ranked number 988 nationally, so just inside the top 1,000. Again, so not a very highly regarded guy. He signs with Maryland, so he goes to play for Maryland. He's there for 1 year in 2023, plays in just 2 games, so he takes a red shirt. And after that season, he decides to hit the portal. So he enters the transfer portal and lands at NC State. And his redshirt freshman year at NC State was hardly insignificant. In that season at NC State, Tamarcus Cooley was awesome. Played in 12 games, played 738 snaps for NC State. And he played all over. He played 380 snaps at slot corner. He played 101 snaps on the D-line, another 93 as a box safety. So nearly 200 snaps in the either on the line or at the box, on the line as a pass rush or blitz or whatever. But he played 39 snaps at free safety, 7 snaps at boundary corner. He even played special teams. So the point is, this is a dude that played all over the field for NC State as a redshirt freshman, like never came off the field. If you're interested, like by comparison, I told you Tamarcus Cooley played 738 snaps on the season. There were two LSU defenders. By the way, that was in 12 games. He didn't play in the bowl game. In 12 games, played 738 snaps. There were 2 LSU defenders that played over 700 snaps. Ashton Stamps played 794. Whit Weeks played 701. And although Whit Weeks was hurt in the bowl game, he only crossed 700 by playing the first half of the bowl game before the injury. So effectively, in 12 games, the only LSU defender that played as many snaps as Tamarcus Cooley was Ashton Stamps. So just for some perspective there on how much of a contributor he was. Now, the other part of this with Tamarcus Cooley as well is not just that he was on the field. Look, I mean, there were a lot of LSU players, like we talked about, that played a lot of snaps. Jordan Gilbert played 615 snaps for LSU this year, but he really struggled. I want to share with you the PFF grades. And if you've listened, you've heard me say this, but I'll repeat it for those who are new. PFF is a metric. It's not the metric. It's just something to consider. But it's easier when you look at running backs or receivers or quarterbacks. We can look at pass attempts or receptions or rushes or yards per carry. There's a lot of different things we can look at. With defensive backs, yes, you can look at passes defensed or interceptions or tackles or things like that. But there's a lot of things defensive backs do away from the ball that we never see. So sometimes it's beneficial to look at what PFF said. So again, with PFF, like if you're a really good player, your PFF grade is like in the 70s. If you're in the 80s, you're like super elite. So for example, there were 2 LSU players whose defensive grade was in the 80s. Braden Swinson had an 83. Zy Alexander had an 81.2. That's it. Swinson and Alexander were the only 2 in the 80s. The only other starter close, Savion Jones had a 75. Whitweek was a 70.9. Just for comparison. Okay. Tamarcus Cooley, his defensive grade was an 80.8. His run defense grade was an 81.6. His coverage grade was an 81.5. His tackling grade was a 75.4, still elite. His pass rush grade was his lowest at a 69.5. Not really worried about that because I think LSU's got plenty of good pass rushers. So keep in mind, 3 of the 5 primary grades were in the 80s. One was a 75, and the lowest was a 69. So let me compare that to 3 safeties that LSU had this year: Sage Ryan, Jordan Gilbert, Major Burns. Sage had 1 score in the 80s, his pass rush grade. His coverage grade was a 73. His tackling grade was a 69. His run defense grade was a 47. And his overall grade was a 69.6. So, a 68.2. 68.2. His overall grade was 68.2. Tamarcus Cooley, 80.8. Remember, Sage Ryan's now at Ole Miss, and you have Tamarcus Cooley. Jordan Gilbert's overall defensive grade this year, and not trying to, I've talked about it a lot. Jordan Gilbert played injured this year with a bum shoulder, but Jordan Gilbert's overall defensive grade was a 56.9. Major Burns was a 58.0. Of the 5 grades we talked about, Major Burns, 4 of them were in the 50s. His pass rush grade was an 84. For Jordan Gilbert, 4 in the 50s. His pass rush grade was a 72. So the point is, you are talking about not only a player who's played a ton, but a player who dramatically outscores the safeties you had this year. So not only did you add a player at a position of need, you upgraded at your greatest position of need, and you added a guy with multiple years of eligibility remaining. So not only can he help you theoretically in 2025, but potentially also in 2026, and if he sticks around, 2027. So a major, major get. Also, the other 2 visits he made, Ole Miss and Kentucky. It was 3 SEC schools, one of them at Ole Miss that you play every year. And the fact is, they got Sage Ryan, you got Tamarcus Cooley. You won. Period. So a major get at the biggest position of need for LSU. I'm not done talking about Tamarcus Cooley. I want to talk about how I think he fits in 2025 and potentially 2026, and a major, major, major get for LSU with Damian Ramos announcing his return for 2025. We'll continue with that as we continue here, Locked on LSU, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Thinking about attending the new 12-team college football playoff? Well, there's one game to go. It's the Natty in the ATL, and attending the 12-team college football playoff is an incredible experience that brings fans together like never before. I know I got to experience the Sugar Bowl in New Orleans, which was awesome. Of course, I was lucky enough to go to the 4-team playoff when LSU played the Peach Bowl in Atlanta, and of course the Natty in New Orleans. But Game Time has a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets for events even easier. It filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. So if you're thinking about using or going to an event, use Game Time Picks. Find tickets for that upcoming game. Browse through the deals. It's a breeze. You can find great value on seats around the venue. The Super Deal in particular stands out as the best value for the event. And I've told you this before, you can see the seat views before you buy, and the app shows you the total cost up front with no surprise fees at checkout. Plus, the on-time ticket delivery and lowest price guarantee gives you complete peace of mind. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem with the code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices guaranteed. So Tamarcus Cooley becomes the 16th member of LSU's #1 portal signing class. And of course, they're not done yet. There are 2 more possible additions to this class. Now, again, I'm going to remind you, Brian Kelly, I'll play this again. You've heard me play it. Brian Kelly told you on December the 21st, this was the day before they added Patrick Payton. Brian Kelly told you December 21st what they were looking to add still.
There'll be some more work on the offensive line and maybe on the back end of our defense.
Okay. They added Josh Thompson from Northwestern, offensive line. Back end of the defense, Tamarcus Cooley. But they're not done. Remember, they're at 16 now. But Brian Kelly on that same day was asked how many players they would add. Remember this, how many players they would add, and listen to the time frame he mentioned.
It's going to probably be closer to the 15 number before it's all said and done.
Have you exceeded your own hopes?
No, we had a pretty clear plan in terms of where we wanted to be. I think we probably... we probably got there quicker, earlier. I thought it was going to be a little bit longer, because again, you have 5 days after your last game, even though the portal closes on the 28th, you still have those 5 days after your last game. So, we thought that this would be longer, and it still might. There's some teams that are still playing that, guys have yet to make decisions, so this could go a little bit longer for us as well.
Team still playing. Guys have yet to make decisions. This could go longer for us. Remember, he said 15. Well, they're at 16 now. And at that moment, they were still anticipating commitments from a couple of guys playing in the playoffs. That hasn't happened yet. It's not to say it certainly will, but it's also not to say that it won't happen. So I think what LSU had to do is, even if they felt good about getting players that would transfer who were playing in the playoff, they couldn't run the risk of having those players get cold feet, stay where they are, get a better offer somewhere else. You had a bird in hand. You went after Josh Thompson. You went after Tamarcus Cooley. You got them both. Thompson ideally plays interior line. Cooley can play anywhere in the secondary. And when I look at safety as well, remember, you've got back there Jordan Gilbert for a 5th year, hopefully gets healthier and has a more productive season. Deshaun Spears, high ceiling. I'm very excited about Deshaun Spears and what his career will be at LSU. Javen Toviano, also, they moved him in the bowl preparation here to play exclusively safety. So when he's just focusing on safety and not nickel or star and say all these different places, what can he look like if he's just playing safety? Mansour Delane from Virginia Tech played corner at Virginia Tech, can also play safety. Does he play corner or safety? What happens if he gets beaten out at corner? Do you play him at safety? The point is you have built depth and talented experience depth as well in your secondary, which has been a problem. DBU ain't looked like DBU ever since Corey Raymond left. Now you're getting back to that. The other thing about Tamarcus Cooley that I like a lot is the fact that he's a redshirt freshman, or just finished his redshirt freshman season, meaning he's got 3 more years of eligibility. He's got 3 to play 3. Now, I'm not saying he's going to hang around for 3 years, but he can. And one of the things we've pretty consistently said here about this portal class for LSU, it's not just the fact that you've added top-tier talent, plug-and-play starters. You've also added players with multiple years of eligibility so that after the 2025 season, you don't see this massive exodus of all of your impact guys. That's what bit Florida State this year. They went all in 2023. They had the undefeated season, the unfortunate injury to Jordan Travis. They don't get in the playoff. Everybody leaves, and this year they bottomed out. They cratered. I think Ole Miss is headed for that same end in 2025. I'm not telling you they're going to crater the way Florida State did, but I think they will regress after being all in, and then you lose all these guys like Jackson Dart, like Walter Nolan, Princely Uman-Miel, and you lose all the guys that were so pivotal for you in this season that was supposed to be your all-in season. So what does that look like next year? I think in the way LSU has recruited this portal class, they have tried to defend against that mass exodus, so you're starting over. You look at guys like Tamarcus Cooley, like Donovan Green, like Michael Van Buren, up and down this portal class, half of the 16 guys that you signed are guys with multiple years of eligibility. So they can be contributors beyond 2025, which is a great thing for LSU. You just look at the roster Brian Kelly's building, the job Austin Thomas and Frank Wilson have done. It is amazing. And this will be the best roster Brian Kelly has had during his time at LSU, bar none. And that includes Damian Ramos. On Monday, the LSU fourth-year junior announced he is returning to LSU for a 5th season. So Ramos in 2021, as a freshman, redshirted with LSU. In 2022, he won the place-kicking job. And after that blocked PAT in the season opener against Florida State that would have tied the game, he's been awesome. He missed a PAT later that season against UAB, but since then, he had not missed a PAT until the bowl game. That was the longest consecutive made PAT streak in LSU football history. He broke the record that was set by Cade York. Also, Damian Ramos, 45 of 58 in field goals for his career for a 77.6% average. Look, in the NFL, you better be 80%. If you're not 80%, you can't kick in the NFL, but 77.6 for a college kicker is really good. The other thing worth mentioning, this year you are going to replace your long snapper in Slade Roy, and then we'll see what happens with Peyton Todd. Remember, Jay Bramblett was your holder for the first 2 years under Ramos in 22 and 23. Bramblett out of eligibility. Peyton Todd took over as the holder this year, and you had some issues with that operation, the snap, the hold. There was a sort of an infamous moment where Brian Kelly was chewing out Peyton Todd coming to the sideline after one of those botches this year, because it was just that is a thing where I think the kicker gets all of the credit and all of the blame, but that is an operation. It is snap, hold, placement, kick. It's all those things that have to work in unison and in synchronicity. And if any of them is off, it can lead to a miss, which of course always falls on the kicker, but it's not always the kicker's fault. And Brian Kelly even said that a couple times this year, where some of those misses, notably one against Ole Miss, wasn't really Damian Ramos's fault. It was the operation. But look, we've seen it in this college football playoff. I mean, just look at the Notre Dame game against Penn State. You had to have it, a kick to send the team to the national championship game, and yet a veteran kicker out of the transfer portal who nailed it. You got to be confident in that guy, and I'd much rather have a 5th-year kicker who's been out there, 58 times in his college career kicking field goals and has the record for the longest made PAT streak in program history. So, yeah, another big get for LSU, having Damian Ramos return for his final season in Baton Rouge. So a lot is coming together for these Tigers. It is Locked on LSU, and we are glad to have you aboard with us here. We'll knock out our final break, come back. The basketball Tigers are on the hardwood, give you a thumbnail preview, and we have updated 2026, the 25 season, but the 26 college football playoff odds will tell you where the Tigers stand now. It's Locked on LSU, your team every day. After the holiday hustle, there is nothing like giving your home a little TLC. And I always find that decluttering and refreshing my space kind of helps me get back into a routine. I always take a week off for Christmas and New Year's, so it's really like 2 weeks. And a big part of that is I kind of clean out my closet and I declutter the house as we pick up after the holidays. So if you are currently looking for furniture, Wayfair is what you got to check out. Whether you're tidying up, clearing out, or just want to give your space a new look to start the year, Wayfair has everything you need and all within your budget. As a matter of fact, as I am sitting here right now doing this show, this L-shaped desk that I am sitting at, I got from Wayfair. If you're familiar with or watched any of my content, when we moved into this house, the family that lived here before us left a very stately, large desk in this office, which I used for a lot of years. I wanted to give myself more space, so I bought a sleeker, smaller desk from Wayfair. When I wanted to redesign the office and move this into the corner, I bought this L-shaped desk from Wayfair. The chair I'm sitting in, I bought from Wayfair. There's something for every style and every home. Now, very candidly, I'm very glad that I'm married to a wonderful woman that understands Wayfair, who introduced me to Wayfair and is where I got all this stuff. So Wayfair makes it easy to tackle your New Year's home goals with endless inspiration for every space. So check it out. Give your home the refresh that it needs with Wayfair. Head to wayfair.com right now. That's WAYFAIR.com. Wayfair.com. Wayfair, every style, every home. The basketball Tigers are on the hardwood Tuesday against Arkansas. I'll give you a quick heads up on that here in just a second. But our friends, some of the odds makers have come up with these hypothetical championship odds for 2026. And one of the ones that I wanted to share with you put out these way too early and hypothetical lines for the 2026 college football playoff. And Texas, presumably with Arch Manning, leading the way at plus 450, followed by Georgia at plus 550, tied with Ohio State. Then Oregon, Penn State, Notre Dame, Alabama, Tennessee, Miami, Clemson, and they're at plus 2,200. Your Fighting Tigers of LSU. I'm going to be very clear. If I listen, y'all have listened to enough of my content or watched enough of my content over the years, you know that if I think LSU is going to be good, I'm going to tell you. If I think they're going to be bad, I'm going to tell you. Plus 2,200 is amazing value for LSU. Because if they go beat Clemson week 1, you'll never see a number like plus 2,200 again. Meaning you bet $100, you win 2,200 if they win the championship. It's been a half decade, and I understand in a 12-team playoff, in theory, it's harder to win because there's more competition. But at the same time, I would say it's easier because it's accessible. You can get look at this year's championship game. It's number 7 Notre Dame against number 8 Ohio State. You don't have to be a top 4 team not only to get in, but to even make it to the championship game. The playoff is working. I also think Alabama having plus 1,600 odds is a farce. They'll have a freshman quarterback. They lost even more after last year's team that lost 4 games with the Bull. They're going to stink. I don't know that I believe Tennessee is going to be very good because Nico hasn't proven he can throw the ball, and the defense is losing a ton. Miami, more turnover at quarterback. Will Carson Beck be coming back off the elbow injury? LSU is going to play Clemson. I don't know what Notre Dame will be next year with a new quarterback. Maybe improved, maybe not. We'll see. All that to say, I love LSU's playoff odds at plus 2,200, the 11th best odds. And I think as this, you got Garrett Nussmeier coming back, which I think will be the best quarterback in the SEC. You had the number 1 portal class, a top 10 high school recruiting class. My goodness, I think plus 2,200 dramatically undervaluing the LSU Tigers for 2025 in the 2026 championship. We can't say that the basketball Tigers are undervalued really in any way. LSU's 11-5 overall, but they're 0-3 in the league. On Tuesday, they face what I don't like to call anything a must win until it literally is. Like if you don't win, then you're eliminated. But just when you look at things circumstantially with what LSU has coming up, they play Arkansas at home on Tuesday. After that, you're at number 11 Texas A&M, then at number 4 Alabama, then home against number 1 Auburn. You're not winning your next 3. So if you don't get this game against Arkansas, then you're going to start 0-7 in the conference. I think the idea of LSU being a bubble team is already gone. That bubble is burst. You had to get off to a fast start against Vandy and Mizzou. Instead, you're 0-3 to start. If there's one bit of solace, it's the fact that Arkansas, with their famous coach and a couple of guys that are going to play in the NBA, aren't really very good either. Arkansas started, they're 11-5, but they're 0-3 in the league. So after losing to number 8 Baylor in the pre-conference, 72-67, and against Illinois, they had some nice wins. They beat 14th ranked Michigan. They won at Miami, but they got into conference play, and they got pounded by 24 by Tennessee. They lost by 7 at home against Ole Miss and lost by 8 at home against Florida. Now, those are 3 ranked teams, but that's 3 ugly losses, 2 of them at home for Arkansas. So now the Hogs come to Baton Rouge, a couple of 0-3 teams in the conference. Arkansas is number 49 in the net. LSU number 68 in the net. So neither of these teams are awesome. And the difference, I would say, is LSU's lost to the bottom of the league, and Arkansas has lost to some of the better teams in the league. Vegas odds makers have installed the Hogs as a 1.5 favorite. But if you look at ESPN's matchup predictor, gives LSU a 58% chance of winning the game. This is a coin flip game. It's a home game. It's a game LSU absolutely has to go find a way to win. LSU shoots about 47.5% from the field, which is nearly 7 percentage points higher than Arkansas has allowed. Arkansas allows about 40% from the floor. LSU shooting about 48% from the floor, just thereabouts. And Arkansas scores 9 more points per game than LSU allows. So Arkansas scores 78. LSU allows 69. So which will give? Will LSU's defense hold up? Will Arkansas's defense hold up? We will find out in due time, as LSU has got to find a way. These are 2 teams that are absolutely desperate for a win if they want to keep their NCAA tournament hopes alive. We talked about what LSU had. 4 of its first 5 in the league are on the road. The Hogs have lost 0-3. They're at LSU, at Missouri, home against Georgia, home against Oklahoma, a couple of winnable games before they go to Kentucky and Texas. It's just an unforgivable gauntlet in the league this year. But if you find your way around 500 in the conference, you can find yourself onto the bubble and into the NCAA tournament, which is why both of these teams, if they want to have any hope of getting back into the bubble conversation at all, got to get this game. We'll see if the Tigers can do it. Meanwhile, the Kim Mulkey and the LSU women won a hard-fought game over Vanderbilt, 83-77 at the Maravich Center. LSU moves to 19-0, 4-0 in the conference. Flaugier led the way for the Tigers with 25 points. This was a pretty closely contested game all the way throughout. A game where neither team ever really got a big lead. The largest lead of the game for LSU was 6. The largest lead for Vandy was 5. So it was nip and tuck all the way. They were tied after 1. They were tied after 2. LSU took a 1-point lead into the fourth quarter, then outscored Vandy 25-20 in the fourth. So a hard-fought game at home, but the Tigers get the win 83-77 as the LSU women, number 5 in the country, move to 19-0 and 4-0 in league play. Okay, that'll do it for us here on today's episode of Locked On LSU. If you're new, please subscribe on your favorite podcast app. Rate us, leave a review. If you're on YouTube, smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell so you're notified whenever we post a new video. As always, one of the fastest ways to help us grow is by leaving your comments below. And please let a friend know that if they love the Tigers, we got you here every single day for Locked On LSU, your team every day.